She escaped her abusive stepfather and discovered an amazing new life inside an empty limousine. Sarah Carter's heart raced as she dashed through the darkened streets of her small Midwestern town. The image of her stepfather's face, splattered with rage, plagued her thoughts, igniting a desperate need to escape. How had it come to this? With each quickened step, the fear of being caught gnawed at her, but the anguish of staying felt unbearable. She felt invisible, drowning in a life dominated by her overbearing stepfather and the biting silence of her mother's absence. The weight of it all made her feel small, cornered, like a flickering candle threatened by a gust of wind. She often found refuge in her drawings, blueprints of cars, designs that only she understood. They were her escape, yet here she was, fleeing her life altogether. Emerging from darkness, she stumbled upon an empty limousine parked haphazardly along the curb. Pausing, she sensed its sleek exterior glimmering faintly under the streetlight, a beacon in her overwhelming storm. Cautiously, she ducked inside, the cool leather wrapping around her like an embrace. How long would it take for him to realize she was gone? The thought spiraled through her mind, tightening her chest. She shut her eyes, attempting to silence the memories, the raised voices, the clanging pans, the unbearable tension that echoed through their cramped home. "You'll never amount to anything," he had hurled at her during a recent fight, and she had believed it. But in her solitude, surrounded by the luxury of the limousine, a flicker of hope ignited within. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As dawn broke, Sarah cracked her eyes open, taken aback to find an elderly man standing at the door, the owner of the limousine, Mr. Thompson. He didn't look angry. Instead, there was an aura of kindness wrapped in his bemused smile. "You must be quite the adventurer," he said, voice gentle, devoid of judgment. In that moment, as he extended a helping hand, part of her wanted to reach out and embrace the warmth of his understanding, but the weight of her past lingered, pulling her into uncertainty. Each day that followed opened a new door, a way to explore her passion, supported by Mr. Thompson's insightful mentorship. Sketching the designs she had once kept hidden transformed her despair into determination. They shared laughs and ideas, but every giggle was tainted with the fear of her stepfather, the tightening noose of her former life. How could she confront him? His presence loomed larger, a shadow in the periphery of her newly kindled hope. Days turned into a tangled web of excitement and dread, like a fraying rope threatening to snap. Sarah found herself at a crossroads. Could she truly step into this new world, or would fear pull her back into the depths she desperately wanted to escape? With her mind racing and her heart clamoring for freedom, the choice weighed heavily on her. She could feel the shadows of her past rising, their hiss whispering the old, familiar fears. Would she confront the man whose control had suffocated her spirit, or let him drive her deeper into despair? Everything hinged on her next move. The picture of her future stood barely flickering, and with it, her chance at reclaiming the life she had fought so hard to escape. In the silence of the limousine, Sarah felt the flickers of bravery burning brighter, but she also sensed the crippling weight of her decisions pressing down, ready to break her resolve. Would she find the courage to embrace her dreams, or would she let the darkness claim her once more? Under the soft glow of the morning light, Sarah sat in the back of the luxurious limousine, her sketches scattered across the polished leather seats like pieces of her chaotic past. The sharp lines and curves of her designs pulsated with a newfound clarity. Shapes that had once been stifled by fear now breathed with potential. Yet, a heaviness hung in the air, as she realized her momentary escape would not suffice against the lurking shadows of her stepfather's authority. Mr. Thompson had become an unexpected anchor. He encouraged her to share her ideas and even allowed her to contribute to small design projects for his limousine service. Each day felt like stepping into an alternate reality, where her creative aspirations began to merge with the practicalities of life. But, despite her enthusiasm, a gnawing doubt overshadowed everything she touched. Could she truly make a mark in a world she felt so unworthy of? The evenings bled into nights filled with her thoughts, a constant cycle of imagination and anxiety. With every charcoal-streaked sketch she left behind, the fear that her stepfather might find her loomed larger, consuming the progress she made. She envisioned his sneering face, the words of ridicule echoing, and a swell of determinism pushed against her ribcage. He saw her as weak, a reflection of his power over her. What if she transformed that perspective into fuel for her fight? Days progressed like scenes in a film. Mr. Thompson taught her about the intricacies of car mechanics and design principles that had once seemed distant. Waking up to this fresh start made her wonder. Could her escape be more than just a physical one? It could be an embrace of who she could become, not the shadow left behind in fear. Yet, with every lesson and every moment of growth came the piercing reminder that her reality had not vanished. She could not remain in this cocoon forever. One late afternoon, as Sarah meticulously shaded details in her latest design, she noticed a message blinking on her phone. It was from a friend from high school, unaware of her ordeal, urging her to join an upcoming design competition, a platform where aspiring talents would showcase their work. The instant thrill was eclipsed by a wave of nausea. Could she expose herself to a panel of critics when her self-image felt so distorted? What if her designs were met with the same disdain her stepfather had shown? And yet, what if this was her chance to reclaim her narrative? As the deadline approached, Sarah wrestled with conflicting emotions. She could envision the thrill of recognition, the applause, the affirmation. But internal voices coaxed her with doubts. You're not good enough. You'll fail. In the dead of night, she pulled herself from her bed, heart pounding like a living thing. There, surrounded by the echoes of her thoughts, she began to sketch furiously, pouring her fears and desires into every line. This would not be a design to hide from. It would reflect her struggles, her triumphs, her very essence. Each stroke became a confrontation, a rejection of her old life. With a final sigh, she put the pencil down and looked at her work. It sparkled with potential, daring her to step beyond her fears. Could she really take this leap? Would she have the courage to face not only her stepfather one day, but also herself, the girl who had learned to fear her own dreams? She grasped her phone tightly, the unyielding metal already feeling like a bridge to her past and future. It was time to define herself on her own terms. The moment had arrived. The competition would take place in just a few weeks. In that instant, Sarah made her decision. The time had come to enter the ring, to face not only her demons, but to prove she was not just a survivor. She was destined to thrive. But even as hope blossomed, she remembered her stepfather was still out there. Would her bold move incite his wrath? Her breath hitched. This was no longer just a quest for acknowledgement. It had morphed into a battle for her autonomy and identity. Would the dreams she dared to chase lead to liberation? Or would they summon the chaos she desperately wanted to leave behind? The stakes were set, and Sarah felt the weight of her resolve. As she prepared to submit her designs, she could not shake the gnawing question. Would she embrace the inevitable confrontation with her past, or let it shatter her dreams? Sarah swallowed hard, her resolve crystallizing. The days spun like wheels, both exhilarating and suffocating. Each moment brought her closer to the deadline of the competition while simultaneously propelling her deeper into her introspection. She could recapture her agency, or allow her fears to usurp her ambitions. With design concepts swirling in her mind like autumn leaves in a storm, Sarah found herself sitting at the cluttered workbench in Mr. Thompson's garage. The rhythmic hum of tools filled the air, grounding her amid the tempest of emotions. This was her sanctuary, a space where she could explore her creativity with the slightest flick of her pencil, or the gentle glide of her hand over paper. She focused, immersing herself in the materials at hand. Each piece of metal and canvas became a conduit for her expression, but the familiar shadow began creeping back, the persistent whisper that she was unworthy. The impending recognition caused anxiety to tighten around her throat. Suddenly, she remembered the look in Mr. Thompson's eyes when she'd shared her designs. He saw her potential not as a reflection of her mother's influence or her stepfather's disdain, but as a true manifestation of who she could become. With that thought, a glimmer of hope replaced the self-doubt that had once consumed her. Determined to tackle her fears head-on, Sarah developed a strategy. Each day, she would dedicate time not just to finalize her designs, but also to practice speaking about them. She started in front of the mirror, rehearsing each pitch, allowing the words to flow until they felt comfortable, familiar. The more she spoke, the more confidence washed over her, but there was still a flare of anxiety. Yet she reminded herself of the transformation unfolding within. Wasn't this what she longed for? As days turned into nights, the quiet in the garage became a canvas for her thoughts, filled not only with sketches, but questions she never dared to confront. How would her stepfather react if he learned of her ambitions? Would he try to crush her spirit again? The thought sent a chill racing down her spine, but alongside it, the burning desire to be free flickered like a steady flame. The looming competition crept closer, and as the deadline drew near, it became harder to ignore the old familiar dread. Anxiety clawed at her chest as if her stepfather's accusations were specters haunting her. Sarah confronted this, embracing inner resilience instead of succumbing to apathy. She envisioned herself on the stage, unveiling her designs to an audience, a place where doubt faded in the light of vulnerability and artistic expression. The moment Sarah uploaded her designs was a watershed. It felt like casting off a heavy cloak. Her burden suddenly lifted, leaving behind a distinct clarity. But liberation often comes with a price, and as she hit submit, the echoes of her past flared up. What if her stepfather discovered this new path? Would he seek to drag her back into obscurity? Suddenly her phone buzzed, jolting her from her thoughts. It was Mr. Thompson, inviting her to discuss the designs she had submitted. His words were laced with excitement, encouragement, and something new: belief. After they met, she left the garage more empowered than before. The realization struck her as she stepped outside. Her fears would remain, but they should not shape her future as they once had. She refused to cling to her past any longer. She had reached a new chapter, one that she would write herself. But in the midst of newfound promise, the nagging question resurfaced. Would she have the courage to defend her identity against her stepfather? The competition might catalyze both recognition and confrontation. The risk of journeying forward weighed heavily on her. Ignoring it would only prolong her battle. Determined, she had to confront the reality that once kept her captive. The push toward her ambition felt like standing on a precipice. Would she leap into the unknown, or retreat into familiarity? The simmering doubt was far from extinguished, and the stakes of her decision loomed larger than ever. Sarah took a deep breath, readying herself to rise once again as she ventured into this new territory. As she opened the door to the design studio, a new resolve surged within her. The choice lay ahead, and, despite the shadows lurking, she was prepared to break through, one bold step at a time. Would her journey of self-discovery and confrontation lead to liberation, or would the past strike back in a way she never anticipated? The sun cast long shadows as Sarah approached the design studio. There was a crispness in the air, whispering promises of growth, yet her heart raced with an undercurrent of apprehension. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the weight of her past was lighting on her shoulders again, but she refused to let that weight rob her of this opportunity. Inside the studio, she caught sight of her latest designs displayed on the wall like a personal showcase of triumph. As she inhaled deeply, she acknowledged the palpable shift within her. The last few weeks had transformed her in ways she had yet to fully grasp. She had ventured into unexplored territories of self-worth and confidence, yet the lingering tentacles of anxiety still coiled around her heart. Would this be enough? Was she capable of defending her newfound identity? Determined to harness that resolve, Sarah picked up her sketchbook. Each brushstroke on the canvas became a revelation, a chance to cement her beliefs. Mr. Thompson's glowing words echoed in her mind. This was not merely a competition, it was an unveiling of who she truly was. With every stroke, she wove vibrant hues into the fabric of her aspirations. But as she worked, the specter of her stepfather loomed in the recesses of her mind. His dismissive voice rang in her ears, threatening to drown out her creative spirit. A sudden notification from her phone broke her concentration. It was a message from her mother, requesting a meetup. Sarah's stomach twisted at the thought. Her mother, entangled in her own sorrow, had often neglected to shield her from her stepfather's wrath. The thought of facing her again triggered a familiar apprehension, a part of her that feared a confrontation she wasn't prepared for. Would this be another attempt to pull her back into the shadows? Despite the apprehension, Sarah recognized the meeting as a chance to assert her autonomy. No longer would she allow anyone to dictate her worth or squelch her aspirations. Instead of hiding in fear, she chose to confront the reality of her familial ties. This moment could either reinforce her strength or remind her of her weaknesses. She needed clarity and purpose, two things she had been so desperately nurturing. As the hour approached, Sarah felt an electric tension running through her. Her mind raced. She was poised at the edge of a cliff, ready to leap, but terrified of what awaited below. What would her mother say? Would she be supportive or dismissive? Would she echo the sentiments of her stepfather, or concede to the woman her daughter had become? Sitting in the cafe, her palms dampened with sweat, she rehearsed the conversation in her mind. Each phrase felt like a lifebuoy, balancing her will to express herself against the tide of doubt threatening to pull her under. When her mother arrived, a quiet hush settled between them, charging the air with unsaid words. "Sarah," her mother began, hesitation palpable in her voice. "I've been thinking about everything." As the conversation unfolded, each sentence created a bridge for Sarah, a pathway to assert her own narrative, rather than remain an echo of her family's tumultuous history. She spoke of her designs, her ambitions, and her feelings. With every word, she reclaimed pieces of herself previously overshadowed. But there was still the lingering question. Could her mother truly change? Would this conversation help solidify Sarah's leap into her own life? Or would it drag her back into familiar cycles? The moment became transformative, challenging Sarah to wield her voice against the expectations of her past. As she challenged her mother with questions that echoed her own self-doubt, she also began to realize that liberation meant empathy, not just for herself, but for her mother too. When the conversation culminated, Sarah stood at a crossroads. Facing the future felt daunting, yet attainable. Would she maintain her footing, or would she falter in the face of emotion? As the cafe door swung open, she understood she was ready to redefine her path, not just as a designer, but as a daughter who demanded respect. But a more urgent realization simmered within. The calm, after the storm, was fragile. Just as she felt herself on the brink of victory, the shadow of her past threatened to engulf her again. The hour had not yet come for her stepfather's reckoning. Soon enough, she would have to face him head-on. The challenge loomed ahead, its edges sharp and dangerous. Would Sarah stand resolute, ready to confront her fears and carve her rightful place in the world, or would the comfort of avoidance lure her back into obscurity? One way or another, the storm was rising again, and this time, it would demand a reckoning. The following morning, the sunlight filtered through Sarah's window, illuminating the sketchbook that had become her lifeline. The conversation with her mother had ignited a fire within her, one that flickered with both hope and the remnants of uncertainty. Each line she drew felt like an act of reclamation. She was more than her past, more than the dismissive words of that man who had tried to stifle her. As she worked through her designs, focus sharpened by her recent revelations, a thought lodged itself in her mind. A plan. She needed to seize control of her narrative, not just within the sanctuary of her studio, but in every corner of her life. The fear of her stepfather's influence festered like a wound, and it was time to address it head-on. Later that day, while arranging her space for a new project, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Thompson. He had seen her designs and wanted to discuss her future in the industry. The invitation both thrilled and terrified her. This was a pivotal opportunity, one that could either further her career or expose her insecurities. But recalling her mother's tentative support ignited a resolve. With each passing moment, she felt more equipped to face whoever or whatever tried to undermine her. The meeting was set for the following evening. The seconds seemed to stretch into eternity as she prepped herself, practicing pitches, preparing her portfolio, visualizing success. This was a stepping stone, a way to step into her potential. But with every stroke of confidence came an echo of doubt, a tightening of her stomach at the thought of once again confronting her stepfather's looming presence. She rifled through her designs, searching for the one that resonated most profoundly. A piece she had made, inspired by the strength she wished to embody. It wasn't just a design. It was a declaration of independence. As she refined the details, her determination blossomed. She could do this. She could stand her ground, and she would not allow fear to dictate the breadth of her future. The night fell, and as she prepared for her meeting with Mr. Thompson, Sarah made a deliberate decision. Before she left for the studio, she texted her mother. "Could we talk again tomorrow? I need to ask for your support." Her heartbeat raced as she hit send, the act itself an affirmation of her autonomy and the need for a continued alliance between them. Mr. Thompson's office was sleek and modern, an emblem of the world she aspired to inhabit. As she walked in, she felt her heart pound, but with a rhythm that resonated with purpose rather than fear. Bringing her portfolio to the table, she laid her heart bare, detailing her inspirations and aspirations. Each presentation stirred her spirit. She was enacting her vision with clarity and passion. After the meeting, Mr. Thompson regarded her with a thoughtful expression. "You have tremendous potential, Sarah. But I sense there's something deeper at play here, something driving your designs beyond aesthetics. Embrace that authenticity." His words washed over her like a balm, further igniting her resolve. She left the studio feeling lighter, empowered. But in contrast, her thoughts drifted uneasily to the conversation she still needed to have with her mother. It wasn't just a check-in. It was an essential discussion about her roots, the complicity that silence had fostered over the years. That night, she finally gathered the courage to face the ghost of her stepfather. Sarah recognized that addressing her past was the key to unlocking her future, and she couldn't postpone the reckoning any longer. It was not merely about survival. It was about transforming her narrative into one of strength. As she lay in bed, her mind racing, thoughts of both her blossoming career and the looming confrontation with her stepfather intertwined, creating tensions that shimmered with anticipation. Tomorrow held promise, but it also heralded inevitable storms. Would she find the strength to confront him, or would her past try to swallow her whole once again? The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but each step she took felt more intentional. The time had come to face the man who had cast a long shadow over her life. It was time to make the shadows recede. The storm awaited. As dawn broke, the weight of the day ahead settled heavily on Sarah's shoulders. She knew she couldn't avoid the confrontation with her stepfather any longer. The sun streamed through her window, now a deceptive comfort, illuminating areas of her studio that had once held only echoes of fear. Today, she vowed it would mark a departure from that. After a quick breakfast, she turned to her sketchbook, hoping for clarity. Every design within those pages reflected her journey. Each line she had drawn and erased representing the fight against her fears. But today's piece needed to be different. It had to embody her resolve to reclaim her narrative fully. She wanted something fierce yet graceful, a statement that screamed independence. As she sketched, she could feel the stirrings of courage swell within her, inviting her to embrace the power of her creativity. Her phone buzzed, shattering her concentration. It was her mother, a simple message. "I'm here if you need me." The gesture warmed Sarah, creating a paradoxical sense of safety and vulnerability. She realized that leaning on someone else did not negate her strength. It supplemented it. In her core, she sensed a turning point, preparing herself for the dual conversations, one with her mother and one with her stepfather. With a deep breath, she slipped out of her studio and onto the vibrant street, the city pulsating with life. Each face she passed reminded her that she was not alone in her struggles, nor did she have to navigate them in silence. The energy of the bustling world sparked a fire of determination. When she approached her mother's apartment, anxiety coiled within her stomach. The familiar scent of coffee wafted through the door as she knocked. They settled onto the living room sofa, where the unspoken words hung heavily in the air between them. "I need us to be honest, Mom. About everything," Sarah began, her voice steady but low. Her mother nodded, her expression both supportive and sorrowful. "I know I haven't always stood up for you," she admitted, tears brimming in her eyes. "I didn't want to believe you were suffering." The conversation ranged through their fears, missed moments, and unspoken truths. With every shared memory, Sarah felt lighter. They unraveled the tightly knitted thread of complicity while building a new foundation of strength together, their bond fortified through mutual understanding and reconciliation. But once they'd laid everything bare, Sarah's thoughts drifted back to her stepfather. "I have to confront him," she said, her voice resonating with newfound conviction. Her mother hesitated, fear masking her pride. "You don't have to do this alone," she urged. "We can go together." "No," Sarah replied, shaking her head firmly. "This is something I need to do for myself." In that moment of clarity, she recognized the power of standing alone against her past, even if it terrified her. The air was thick with tension as she approached the familiar house. Memories flooded back, moments of fear and helplessness. She hesitated at the door, summoning every ounce of courage. The door creaked open, and there he stood, his imposing figure already testing her resolve. "Sarah," he sneered, a hint of surprise crossing his features. "It's time to talk." The words came out strong and unwavering. She stood firm, anchored by her mother's support and her own transformation. This was more than just a confrontation. It was the beginning of her liberation. But as he stepped back, ready to unleash his disdain, the atmosphere crackled with uncertainty. A storm of conflict and courage stood ready to clash. Would she maintain this fierceness? Or would the shadows of her past drag her back into the depths of fear? As the door swung further open, Sarah prepared for the whirlwind of confrontation. And yet, amidst the brewing storm, the boundaries of her newly crafted identity felt tantalizingly close to breaking free. As the door opened wider, Sarah found herself staring into the storm-swept eyes of her stepfather. The once familiar setting of this doorway now felt like an arena where battle lines were drawn. She could feel her heart pounding against her ribcage, challenging her to stand her ground. "Is this what you wanted, Sarah?" he asked, a mixture of sarcasm and menace lacing his voice. "You think you can just waltz in here and demand respect?" "Respect is not something you can demand from people to whom you've shown nothing but contempt," she replied, her voice clear, but laced with an undercurrent of doubt that she was quick to smother. In that moment, she realized that she was not only confronting him, but also the part of herself that had felt small and powerless for so long. His smirk widened, twisting into something cruel. "You think you've grown up? You're still that scared little girl I remember." "Actually, I'm not." The words bubbled up fiercely from her core. "And I'm here to tell you that it's over. I won't let you control my life any longer." The air between them became electric, thick with unresolved pasts. Every painful memory that lingered in that room screamed for acknowledgement. Sarah's fists tightened, but she kept them at her sides, choosing a quiet strength over violence. She began to draw on the resources she had cultivated in herself: the conversations with her mother, the sketches in her book, her own creative spirit, ready to break free. "I've found my voice," she declared, "and I'm using it." She was astonished to discover that she meant those words. The passion behind her statement was a flicker of a flame, growing stronger with each moment he remained in her sight. He stepped closer, invading her personal space. "You think you're stronger than me?" "Strength isn't about size or intimidation. It's knowing who I am and not being afraid of it." He recoiled momentarily, his expression morphing from confidence to uncertainty. For the first time, Sarah sensed the cracks in his facade. Perhaps she had underestimated her own power, a realization that sent ripples of exhilaration through her veins. "Maybe you should leave, before I decide to show you what real strength looks like." His voice was low, but there was a tremor, an uncharacteristic vulnerability vying for dominance. For a brief moment, Sarah felt a flicker of doubt, wondering if she could hold her ground. Yet something deeper pushed her forward. She was a tapestry woven with shared experiences, gathered strength, and renewed confidence. She wouldn't falter. "I'm walking away from you for good," she said firmly. "The only power you had over me was the one I gave you." The room fell silent, and in that stillness, Sarah felt a sense of clarity washing over her. She realized that while she saw him as formidable, her fear of consequences was now overshadowed by her determination to reclaim her existence. With each word she spoke, the hold he had on her diminished. She turned to leave, her heart racing not from fear, but with the intoxicating rush of liberation. As she stepped back into the sunlight, feeling the warmth embrace her, she finally understood that this was more than just a confrontation. It was the ignition of her journey toward an authentic life. But even as she walked away, questions lingered in her mind. What would she do next? Would she finally pursue her dreams of becoming a designer? Or would the shadows of her past continue to chase her? With newfound determination, but also uncertainty about the future, Sarah began to thread her way through the streets. She felt like a butterfly emerging from a dark chrysalis, yet still unsure where her wings would take her. The horizon stretched before her, filled with both promise and the unknown. Could she navigate these waters of self-discovery? Would she truly break free? Or would remnants of her past pull her back into the depths of what she had escaped? As she pondered these questions, one thought glimmered through the haze. It was time to create not just designs, but a life that reflected her strength. Encountering her stepfather had awakened something within her, a fierce resolve to carve out an identity she could truly own. And beneath the surface of her burgeoning creativity lay the disturbing truth. Confronting the monster may have been only the beginning. What else would Sarah have to face to untangle herself from her past entirely? Only time would reveal the answers. As Sarah ambled through the crowded streets, her mind raced with possibilities. Each step away from her past felt like shedding layers of an old skin, one more burdensome than the last. The sharp sunlight ignited a sense of clarity, urging her to focus on the future, to think beyond the chaos. What would it take to turn her newfound determination into tangible dreams? After years of feeling stifled, she now felt a kindling of purpose within her, awakening the dream she had shelved during the storm of her childhood. Design was not just a hobby. It was an expression of her identity. With every style sketch she drew, every color palette she carefully drafted, she released fragments of herself that had long been hidden. "For too long, I've been afraid to let anyone see this side of me," she murmured, pondering for a moment how her life had changed within the span of an hour. Walking away from her stepfather had ignited an awareness of her voice and desires, and she now realized it was more than just a confrontation. It became the catalyst for her reinvention. She now yearned to configure a plan, a roadmap toward her dreams. With purpose, Sarah pulled out her phone and searched for design schools nearby. A tingle of excitement coursed through her. Could she dare to apply? Their mission statements projected confidence, creativity, and community. Could she potentially find a place where her creative ambitions wouldn't just exist, but flourish? Yet doubt clung uncomfortably to her thoughts. The memory of her stepfather's cruel taunts echoed like a warning. What if she failed? Her hands fidgeted as she wrestled with this fear. But then she remembered this was the very fear she had just confronted. She had stared into the eyes of intimidation and survived. A rush of conviction surged within her. She didn't need validation from her past or the fear of it. With bold intention, she submitted an application to her top choice. Pressing the send button felt like an exhilarating leap into the unknown, an embrace of her potential. But as she exited the cafe and stepped further into the sunlit street, she thought of the obstacles that still lay ahead. Financial challenges, the need for sponsorships, the trials of leaving her unsafe surroundings completely behind. But she couldn't let those things paralyze her. While the echoes of her past had been powerful, they were now baseline music against the backdrop of her hopes. She decided to visit the local craft stores and revisit her imaginative side, an essential part of her journey. With every thread and fabric she examined, she imagined draping her designs across fresh canvases, her hands weaving a life she chose. That evening, Sarah spread her designs out across her small table. Each shape and color brought her satisfaction as the night surrendered to quiet. She implemented small adjustments that spoke to her emotions, a bridge between her unresolved feelings and her aspirations. Yet, midnight crept in, and with it arrived the steady hum of her mind, weighing the floor of her heart once more with memories, challenging conversations about money, self-worth, and worthiness. A realization struck her with fierce clarity. She was not merely reacting to her past. She was building the self-belief that had been systematically eroded over time. This act of creation was therapy, a way to unravel those knots of fear and self-doubt. But would crafting a new identity be enough for her to withstand the challenges ahead? As she closed her sketchbook, a thought bloomed. The journey to reclaim her life was only just beginning. She felt a mixture of anticipation and trepidation shoot through her at the thought of stepping into a new world, at where it would lead her. Even without her stepfather's shadow, there were new battles to fight, new confrontations awaiting her. But this time, she wasn't afraid. She was armed with a voice, a fresh perspective, and the ferocity to ensure her new path remained bright. Would her designs resonate with others? Could her tale of transformation inspire someone else? The moment she had been waiting for loomed closer. The time had come for Sarah to face the world, armed with creativity, strength, and vulnerability. What awaited her on this uncharted road? How would she navigate the uncertainties that accompanied her dreams? The following morning dawned with a stark brightness that felt almost foreign to Sarah. She brewed coffee with trembling hands, caught in the swirl of anxious anticipation. Today, she planned to visit the design school she had long admired from a distance. It was a concrete step toward reclaiming her dreams, yet her stomach churned as doubt whispered familiar, insidious lies. What if she didn't belong there? What if the other students were far more talented? She dressed meticulously, choosing a vintage shirt she had tailored herself. As she looked in the mirror, the reflection felt new, like a butterfly emerging from a cocoon. The girl who had once been silenced by her past stood before her, ready to embrace the challenge ahead. The school was a bustling hive of creativity, filled with students and instructors animatedly discussing design concepts. A nervous energy thrummed through her. Every bright color and intriguing shape captivated her senses. She stepped inside, absorbing each detail of the environment while trying to maintain her composure. This was where she envisioned herself. Yet now, amid the laughter and exchanges of ideas, she felt an acute sense of inadequacy creeping back in. As she toured the facilities, absorbing the infectious enthusiasm, a thought flickered in her mind. This could be home. This could be the crucible in which she forged her identity. She deliberately sought out the school's ethos, to cultivate talent, ignite passion, and foster community. But as she listened to students share their aspirations, she could feel her resolve wavering. Could she stand alongside them? Then came the moment that shifted everything. An instructor, vibrant and commanding, led a workshop on design presentation. After a few brief introductions, they were prompted to share their concepts. As the students presented their ideas, Sarah tightened her grip on her notebook, fighting to keep her voice steady amidst her roaring heart. When her turn arrived, fear and resolve battled violently within her. Would her designs make sense to these strangers? What if they met her words with disbelief? She inhaled deeply, pushing her fears aside. With shaky hands, she stood. I want to create designs inspired by resilience, clothing that embodies strength and renewal. As she spoke, she felt the dynamics shift. Her vulnerability crafted a connection while her passion drew listeners in. The audience responded not with judgment but with encouragement, nodding as they recognized the honesty behind her words. Could it be? Had she found a place that embraced her authentic self? After the workshop, an eager student approached her. Your concept was really amazing. I felt so similar. It's hard to express that in design. They exchanged ideas, and for the first time, Sarah sensed that her lived experience wasn't a hindrance, but a source of inspiration. Yet with each moment of connection, the thought of her stepfather's voice resurfaced, heavy and unyielding. You'll never make it. The familiar taunt clawed at her mind. Why was it so difficult to fully accept that she was no longer under his oppressive shadow? Determined not to make her past her anchor, Sarah made a decision during the walk back. She would seek mentorship at the school. She understood that to succeed, she would need guidance. Someone who could help shape her raw talent into something marketable. But the process of opening up would test her once again. Gripped by newfound resolve, she approached the admissions office the next day with a list of questions and aspirations. Yet as the glossy brochure of the school lay open before her, a flicker of anxiety surfaced. What if this was another round of disappointment? The thrum of self-doubt loomed like a storm cloud. Can the past be truly left behind? She wondered aloud, her thoughts tumultuous. In the moments to come, Sarah would have to confront not only her past as she sought her place in this design world, but also the introspection that accompanied ambition. Her journey into vulnerability and self-discovery was marked by constant choices, some that would forge her future, and others that threatened to hold her captive. Would she find the courage necessary to break the cycle of her history? As shadows from her past continued to test her, the question remained. Was she truly ready to claim her story, her identity, and her potential? The deeper she delved into her dreams, the more unresolved fragments of her life demanded attention. Would her designs make an impact, or would she allow her fears to take center stage once more? Time passed, and the seasons shifted, much like Sarah's journey. The summer sun poured over the design school as she stepped out for her morning sketching sessions, feeling more like a student and less like an outsider. The raw emotion behind her designs became a conduit for transformation, not just for herself, but for those who encountered her work. With each stroke of charcoal and brush of paint, she dared to spill her truth onto the canvas. In her classes, she formed alliances with fellow aspiring designers. They saw the weight she carried, and rather than shying away from it, they embraced it. They challenged her to dig deeper, to confront the rawness of her past, and allow creativity to flow from her scars. Sarah reveled in this vibrant community, feeling the pressure of judgment fade away. Instead, encouragement flourished, solidifying her newfound identity as an artist grounded in resilience. As she worked diligently towards her final project, Sarah received an email that made her heart leap. The design competition she had once deemed out of reach was now open for entries. The world of fashion beckoned her. Teetering between exhilaration and fear, she acknowledged this competition as the ultimate test of her growth, a chance to present her voice to a broader audience. "Face your fears head on," Mr. Thompson had often said. His words resonated within her. She realized that the stakes were not just about the competition. They were about honoring her journey, her voice, and her newfound autonomy. With every day leading to the deadline, her sketches transformed into deeply personal pieces that conveyed her hammering heart, her shattered experiences, and her relentless resolve. As she laid her final designs before her peers for critique, she felt a surge of pride. They resonated with authenticity, revealing the complexity of her past while celebrating the woman she had become. Each line she created became not only a piece of art, but a declaration of defiance against the very darkness that once threatened to consume her. When the fateful day of the competition arrived, Sarah stood backstage, her heart wild with anticipation. The echoing applause of the crowd felt like an affirmation of her journey. With her portfolio clutched tightly, she stepped forward to present, articulating her designs with confidence that had once eluded her. As she spoke, the vulnerability that accompanied her words forged a connection with the audience. They didn't just see designs. They saw her story and the visceral power embedded in her journey. As the final applause resonated, words of praise from esteemed judges washed over her like a balm. "You've not only designed clothing, you've designed a narrative of strength that speaks volumes," one judge remarked. The validation ignited a thrill that set her heart ablaze. Sarah knew that while the competition marked a significant achievement, it was merely one chapter in a narrative she was yet to fully explore. Days turned into weeks, and the results of the competition loomed. Sarah found herself walking the familiar streets with purpose. Her heart, once gripped by fear, now beat with solid confidence. The whispers of her stepfather faded into echoes as she developed a mantra. "I am my own master." When she finally received the email announcing the winners, her hands trembled as she hit open. The screen flickered to life, words materializing that would cement her journey. "Congratulations, Sarah. You won the competition." A wave of emotion crashed over her, relief, joy, and an exhilarating sense of accomplishment that she had chased for so long. In a moment, the little girl who had feared to dream felt the fulfillment of her aspirations. Recognition for her hard work solidified her new identity. As her classmates and friends celebrated, she embraced each one, the friendships she formed lifting her spirit. But a part of her mind turned again to her stepfather. Would he now see her? Would this moment expose the walls she had built around herself? The following days brought news that would shock him. When Sarah called her mother to share the achievement, the conversation unexpectedly revealed a promise that her mother would begin to unite their estranged family, ensuring her past would remain distant. There was acknowledgement of harm in their family, but also an unyielding commitment to move forward together. This newfound resolve mirrored her own. She had transformed from the frightened girl into a determined woman who understood that true empowerment lay in the ability to reclaim her narrative. Through the designs she created, she proved to herself and the world that resilience always blossoms from the depths of struggle. In the weeks following her victory at the competition, Sarah was approached by mentors and industry professionals keen to support her career. Opportunities flourished before her. She knew she was no longer seeking validation. She was the author of her own success. As she stood on the precipice of a new chapter, filled with endless possibilities. She felt solid confidence in every pulse of her heart. A golden sunlight gilded the designs in her studio as Sarah closed her sketchbook, a satisfied smile dancing on her lips. She had achieved the impossible. Not just survival, but flourishing into the very essence of who she was meant to be. As she stepped out into the world, she knew that she wasn't merely moving toward a career. She was fulfilling a dream grounded in authenticity. With every chance to showcase her designs, every opportunity to share her story, she was forging a legacy far beyond the shadows of her past. Her future was shimmering brilliantly ahead, a canvas still needing rich layers of color, intricate designs, and daring lines. As days turned to months and accomplishments unfolded, Sarah stood tall, ready to embrace whatever came next. Today's triumph was only the beginning. This was a life crafted through struggle, colored in resilience, and defined by the unapologetic pursuit of her dreams. The moment she stepped into her studio felt like finally finding home. If you are inspired by stories of personal transformation, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on exclusive emotional tales that ignite courage. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and elevate these stories. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Sarah's journey. Finally, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. The purpose of overcoming our struggles is to inspire others to flourish. This is the moment to show your support, so don't wait even one more second.